we are doing some painting now up in Scotland, some of my favourite spots in the past. This being one of them, a little research loch just above Loch Lomond. So we've worked our way up to Loch Lomond and then we're going across the day, up to midday, to Loch Long at Arrochar. So here we have freshwater lochs, and then over there it's a sea loch. But again, all very well sheltered. We're going to use different mediums, have a go at a bit of watercolour, a bit of pastel, and some acrylics. We haven't brought oils with us this time. And I'm going to show you ways of doing very, very fast studies. For instance, last night I was doing quick studies, 10 to 15 minutes apiece of pastels, 4 within the hour, just to show you how fast you can work with that medium, doing the old-fashioned block and blending techniques on pastel paper. We're doing a white canvas today with acrylic, we're doing some watercolour later as well. This place would suit both ideally, wouldn't it? And of course in between I'll be doing a little bit of fishing as well, because I would like to do that. So here we are then, west coast of Scotland, beautiful scenery, a few midges, but it's nice to come back to some old haunts again. I hope you enjoy it with me as much as I'm going to enjoy it, and already have been in fact. We took a little boat out yesterday for an hour and it rained for the first 10 minutes and soaked us, and then it was beautiful again. The weather keeps changing so quickly, so constantly, but absolutely lovely to be out here again. Hi there, here we are at Loch Long in Scotland. Beautiful day with lots of white fluffy cumulus clouds floating past, and a beautiful scene of the loch, which you've just seen on camera, going up to my left here. Big sheet of hot pressed watercolour paper for mixed medium. I'm going to use China graph pencil and watercolour and acrylic inks, because we've got a lovely depth of colour in these foreground areas at the front with the weeds and so on, and we've got then the delicate sky and the loch going back into the distance. Let's start loading up my acrylic inks. Now I keep a separate set of these. They're very bright, very strong and water based, so you can do all the wet into wet effects with them, but I tend to use the watercolours first and then these stronger colours towards the end, or they're just as good on their own as our watercolours. Careful where you get them though, because they're very strong, and if you spill them onto yourself you'll have a job getting them off. But these acrylic inks are colour fast, unlike the ordinary Indian inks, and that means that your painting will remain the same colours you started it in the future. Nice with these dispensing bottles because you can just drop the colours from the nozzles, squeeze the back and just drop them into your palettes. You can mix them the same as watercolour and thin them down with water. Very basic set of colours that I keep for the inks. So what I'm going to do is build up the watercolour and then the inks and then pastel over the top. I'm going to do quite a strong drawing with the China graph pencil first as well. China graph pencil because I'm able to use, it's waterproof and nice and strong, and I can paint over the top of it with it still showing strongly. I just carry my travelling box. All I need in here: masking fluid, spare watercolour, sponge, a basic set of brushes, and my two little watercolour palettes, and of course a jar of water straight from the Scottish stream to make life rather fun. Let's get on with our painting then. I'm going to start off with taking out my China graph pencil. That's this one. These are rather nice because not only are they waterproof, but you can also sharpen them simply by tearing down the string and off a piece of paper, and you've no knife to have to use out in the field. I've made my first two marks. I've decided how the entire composition will be, basically. Unless I want to move the odd thing around as Constable did, you actually change there slightly, and why not? In orange. Play the warm and cool greens against each other as well. Remember the blues in the greens and the brown greens. There's warms of all colours, so there might be a warm blue and a cool blue. A cool blue would be cerulean, a warm blue would be going towards the ultramarine or the reds. And a lemon yellow is cool and yellow ochre is warm. We finished the watercolour and I built up the coloured inks in the bottom to give a stronger foreground. Now I want to lay over the unison pastels, which is quite a loose and lively effect that enables me to tighten up areas as I wish. It will also show you why I have the papers taken off the pastels so I can use them sideways and nice and freely. Just scumbling over the sky and softening or highlighting any edges I need to highlight. The wind is very strong now and the tide coming in quickly, so I'm having to work very, very quickly. And it's also why I've had to dub this part over, because you can't hear a word with the wind blowing in the microphone. Well, I think I'm almost there. It's nice and lively, it's bright, it's used all the three techniques of the light watercolour showing through, the stronger inks at the bottom, and the pastels just gently glazing over the top, picking out the brighter colours. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let's go on from here to looking at a painting that's been lost, one I did yesterday with just coloured inks up in the woodland, and it rained so hard that I just got drowned. Let's see if we can bring that back to life by putting pastels over the top, bringing the light colours out, shall we? You never know when you're going to find a lovely composition or something might surprise you. Carry the camera whenever you can. Here's a good example. These deer were just hiding by the pathway as I went through the woodland, and I got these lovely shots which I was able to paint from later. You can see I've used composites of the shots taken, put them together on the computer and move the deer around to have light against dark, dark against light, and make a nice composition. Here's a scene I've known for some years, this lovely old bridge going over the river. Hello, I said we'd now come and try and rescue a watercolour, in this case a coloured ink that had been overworked and got too wet yesterday. You see it here, my pastels and the ink. What I'm going to do is put all the light areas and all the colour back in and use the remaining dark areas to glow through. What a nice way of working. You can see an immediate advantage here in that I'm able to lay the lights over the darks and work either way. So although the acrylic ink has been well washed out by the rain the previous day, I'm able to bring back highlights and details and sharp edges with the pastels, or blend and scumble if I wish to. Okay. You can also see how I've managed to bring back those vibrant warms into the foreground too, the bright oranges and yellows that you couldn't put back in with transparent watercolour. There, look, the sunlight in the foreground, and I've managed to bring back over those darks. Now here's a spot I always love every year, on the road to Inverary. You can pass this bridge and then to a smokehouse. Wonderful stuff, smoked mussels, smoked salmon, and lots of little delicacies that I can eat on the way and have as a picnic. And then we go on from that road down to Inverary, pretty little fishing port. Not user fishing now, of course, but still a very, very pretty place to go. And Inverary Castle, a lovely place to visit, as you'll see. And here's the proof of the pudding. As I said, here we are at Loch Fyne, just above Inverary, eating those lovely smoked Loch Fyne mussels and smoked salmon and prawns and all sorts of fresh bread and lovely goodies. Now, I enjoy the good things in life as most people do, and an ordinary bottle of whisky to 20 or 30 pounds is fine for me, but just look at the price of some of this. Wonderful stuff, and in fact they actually make and blend their own whisky up there. But £10,000 for a bottle? Would you dare have a sip? What you'll notice here also is a difference in photography. Where you point the camera at a light object, the darker objects in front will become very dark. If you come down to the darker objects and then have more light, there you have it, then the lighter objects become much lighter and the darker objects can be seen. This can be quite difficult unless you're using filters with a camera, and if you're working from photographs, sometimes you've got to take several to be able to compare the tonal variations and colours. Photographs are great to work from. I work from a lot myself, but they're there to be used, not copied. And that's where the computer can come in as well. You can play a lot with them on the computers and change their values and all sorts. This wonderful old stonework here, and going back centuries, beautifully made, and of course it's interesting to see what the Vandals have done in those days, back in the 1800s and so on. And where would we be without hearing the Highland pipes? And even the children are up to it on the caravan site, and that's why I take my caravan up there and use it as a mobile studio and travel around. But on the site, these two youngsters, quite proficient, playing away down the bottom of the field. Wonderful to hear them as the sound echoes around the hills and the lochs. Now remember what I said about water and how to paint it. I'm going to freeze a couple of shots here just to show you what I mean. While the water's moving, we recognise it as water. We can see the reflections, we can see the movement. But once you stop it, it just looks like a bunch of white foam, or polystyrene, or plastic. It's going to take gestural brushstrokes and a lot of rapid movement of the hand and brushstrokes to try and get this effect of water. You can't do it just by trying to represent it as a photograph. As you can see, a still photograph just doesn't show it. There, look. That could just be like a cotton wool. So how are we going to get the feeling of water? By very gestural strokes. Out of here the same way. Just let it gently reflect down through. You see how lovely that looks there. Right, well, as you can see here, I've finished the sky, the water, all the basic reflections are in, and I've put in these little bits of dark weed just to give the surface of the water a little bit more texture so that we've got the soft against the rough and then the light against the dark and the cool against the warm. Coming down to the bottom here, where the gravel is, you can see I've let the underpainting just come underneath the surface of the water and brought some textures closer to us where the ripples are, and the little bits of stone are a bit darker to give again texture of smooth against rough. So I reckon that little picture's quite pretty, it'll do. It's only a fast study, but it's taken me just over 3/4 of an hour. Well, here we have another chance for a watercolour and pastel. This rather lovely view behind me of the waterfall cascading down.
I'm going to draw it out lightly first in charcoal pencil, then put watercolour washes on till an almost finished, fairly strong watercolour, and hopefully then, once it's dry, build up with the pastel over the top to give my final light. We could actually take a wet brush and finally draw out some of these twigs if we wanted to, just to give a bit more crispness to some of those. Where the pastels are very large and chunky, it's quite possible to use water and a fine brush just to give a bit more finesse, a bit more sharpness to the twigs. I don't think I will in this case because I'm quite happy with the explosive quality of it. This is what I used to call the Jewel Beach when I used to come here years ago, because it's covered in quartz and bits of granite. It's a lovely little beach. So we've set up now, the rain's just gone again, and we're going to do a watercolour rather than a pastel because the weather keeps changing so fast. I just want to have a quick go. There we go. Rain's sheeting down again now, so we have to go. Just want to do a little bit more now I'm back in the caravan because the wet into wet effects have gone very wet into wet. We've lost some of the detail, and because it was so raining so hard there I could not carry on. I just want to bring out some of these foreground textures a bit more here before we finish it. So we've set up now, the rain's just gone again, and we're going to do a watercolour rather than a pastel because the weather keeps changing so fast. I just want to have a quick go. There we go. Rain's sheeting down again now, so we have to go. Just want to do a little bit more now I'm back in the caravan because the wet into wet effects have gone very wet into wet. We've lost some of the detail, and because it was so raining so hard there I could not carry on. I just want to bring out some of these foreground textures a bit more here before we finish it. These magical places. You can see the mackerel even coming up on the surface here. See the mackerel just at the fifth buoy here, going mad. There's rats on top. see how the smoke is curing the fish. It really doesn't come any better than that. You can see hot smoked mackerel now just been catching. That really is the most beautiful flavour. Superb. I can lift out a bit from there, or just a bit lighter. Yeah, and I think we're about done. Well, not ideal, but got to overwork now. But it shows that even with the worst of weathers, we can come back and at least try and pull something back. Sometimes you can overwork something, sometimes it wants a bit more. Let's give it a bit more, and even if we deck it, so what? Let's get the chances of things working or not working. Let's run so much there, and that would have left a bit out. Take a bit away. That will have to do. Not really happy. I'd like to have been a lot looser, but considering it got rained on not once but 3 times, I think it'll have to do.
yeah. No, exactly.
One for 15. Yeah.
On a calm day like this, get the most glorious reflections of the mountains, as you can see.
this morning, and look at the beautiful morning it is. Mirrored Loch Long. Been a wonderful stay. Hi, well here we are in the northern lakes, Cumbria, at Ullswater. We're going to do a couple of paintings here. We've only got a few days and the weather's been pretty abysmal, but the first day was nice and I managed to get some nice shots, and it's shown the diversity of light and colour that can be found here in early summer on this beautiful lake.
For a bit of rum. Oh, these are warm, especially
My sausage sandwich.
Oh, I'll just stuff with fruit. I don't know if I want the butcher as well. Seems a bit indulgent.
Lucky eater.
Oh.
The dog's waiting for the bits.
Sleep again. Yeah.
Take a shot of how it is now. So much of this rain and drizzle, very hard to then hopefully make the fields go back a little bit as well. It's after all summer, so we want to try and get the feeling of this summer light. So I found more complicated painting than it at first looks. Really strong colours here in the foreground, these greens. I can really push them now, because I haven't got to worry about the rain coming onto them or anything. I can really get the sunlight going and give it a richness that it didn't have quite before. And this might just give enough for the eye to look at the foreground in a bit more detail. Normally we go back from warm to cooler to cooler to cooler, and from in focus and gradually more out of focus as things go away from us, which is just picking up on these rocks a little bit here now. So this area is working reasonably well now, so we can probably leave it alone. There's a few more strokes here and there, but it's over to the left, the tree that still isn't quite working right. As near as we're going to get, I think, yeah. There we are then, we'll leave it at that for the moment. Chance we're going to get to do a painting in fine air here this time, this trip round. And having got those cooler greens, you need some blues amongst them. Look at this grass here a little bit. But I hope it's captured the mood of the morning, which is all we're trying to do. Good. For a quick study. Is take a whole series of photographs which we can use later for studio work, and also try and do an oil out in plein air and a pastel and a watercolour. Now we're on the third of them, it's our last day, and it's the pastel. We've done the oil up on the mountainside with a quick watercolour about an hour ago, just to show you what can be done in these conditions, and now I'm about to do a pastel as well. As I say, in these conditions you have to work very quickly, so my techniques that I've shown you are working very loosely in watercolour, and now we're going to work very loosely with the pastel. I've got to work fairly quickly because the light's always changing, plus we've got the rain in the offing as normal. Let's see if we can work out a composition quickly. Warmer colours in the foreground. If it's going to be that dark there, then he's going to be reflected on the water, that wet surface there, which shows that it's off the ground. So I'm going to have to act up anyway. probably isn't a bad thing, because it'll stop me fiddling too much. Let's call it a day on this one, shall we? Let's tidy up.
Well, this is such a lovely scene, it seems a shame not to make the most of it. Well, the weather's just good enough to have a second go with the watercolour. And we'll see what we can do with that as our last painting of this little trip.
So let's try the same composition, but this time in watercolour. Not going to draw it out, no time for that, the weather's so changeable. We'll just get straight in with the painting, just mark out very lightly with a thin down paint as to where the composition's going. So if you like, it could be called a very basic drawing, but it will only be a very basic. Just so I know I'm going to put my colours. That is in there, nothing in the water. It's nice to just get the water from the loch side, from the lake side. Let's get it there.
Bye.